Good afternoon, Americans. This is your favorite alien here on the afternoon of Tuesday, August 28th, 2023, with a commentary. A special commentary. Whether it will take the watermelons off your brains, I don't know. But it's a commentary for you Americans. In the last decade, 2013 to 2023, we have had mass shootings all over the place. People killing people for whatever reason you can imagine. People saying, I hate black people, so I'm going to kill them. I hate Asians. I hate Jews. Whatever it is. And other people taking advantage of it, like the Republicans and Democrats, with the extremist versions taking advantage of their parties. Started with the contract with America back in the 1990s, but in the 13 to 23 decade, it got worse. Because we had the Obama administration and the Trump and Biden administrations, which had thrown this country into a almost disintegration. Let me give you an example of what's going to happen to you if you don't wake up and smell the roses here. Back in the 1990s, I believe it was NBC, I could be wrong, but there was a program that lasted, 5 seasons, called Sliders, about this group of people who went to parallel Earths that were almost similar in some cases and very different in others, or very different from the world that you had. In some worlds, the United States was taken over by the Soviet Union. In one world, if I remember my thing right, because I just saw a few episodes of seasons 1 and 2, I believe. I never saw 3, 4, and 5. But there was an episode there where the British won at this Revolutionary War, and you had the British States of America, the BSA. Yeah, remember that one? And then you had the Germans in another one. And aliens destroyed you. Oh, yeah. You've had that one, too. Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, that's kind of like 2065, what's going to happen to them. But the United States, on this timeline, gets destroyed by its own stupidity. And like I say, the one that I'm talking about today was when they went into this world twice, 2 different related worlds, where in one time the person that was supposed to save the world got killed, and the other, he survived. But the one where he got killed, he gave the girl in the series a little chip, computer chip. Mind you, this is the 1990s, so you got to remember how the computer chips were in those days, huh? Okay. So, in this episode, of the second episode, back to back, with the same world, different a little bit. The first one he died, the second one he lived. And they found out in the second episode, the first episode they didn't tell us what that world was. They just told us that they wanted to get out of there. And he died towards their sliding, and then they find out they're in an identical, almost world that they just left. Poor guys. But in this world, the president in the mid 1960s was not Johnson. He lost the election in 1964, okay? Kennedy got assassinated, just like in our timeline, yeah. And Mr. Johnson took over, but hey, from 64 to in 63 to 64, he didn't do a good job. He didn't win the nomination. The guy who won the nomination and became president was J. Edgar Hoover, FBI director and #1 slimeball. Yes. And what did he do? He would do what Donald Trump wants to do, declare martial law and completely wipe out the U.S. Constitution from everybody. So he took it away from where it is in Congress. He took all the copies away from libraries and subsequent books. He had the military go out there and, because you were on martial law, pick up every single copy of the Constitution. And mind you, this is the late 1990s when this program is done. So it's about 30 years later. And the American public know absolutely nothing about the Constitution, except if you're an old person at the time. But they could care less. Because remember, it's the baby boom generations, and we could care less about the Constitution. How many of you baby boomers and subsequent generations have actually read the Constitution? I would say maybe 1 to 2% if we're lucky. Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. And so this guy that died turned out to be a federal justice, on top of that, of the Supreme Court, who had the last copy on the chip of the Constitution. Yeah. And he was going to make it public. Oh boy, can you imagine making the Constitution public? Say you commit martial law in 1965, and it's going to be 50 or 60 years, and soon. So say in 60 years from then, 2025, here we are. The Constitution is a vague memory from people. Remember, I'm 64 and I was born in 1959. So you people that are 70 and 80 have a little vague notions. You have the 90, well, you know about the... So the U.S. democracy is kind of up in the air because most of us are old age and thrown into asylums or something. That's what they were doing in the 1990s, and arresting them. So I would think that, yeah, in 2020s, whoever is president under the martial law would do the same thing. So you see, Donald J. Trump and also Joseph Biden is heading that same way, because he's viewing the Constitution from a leftist point of view, and Mr. Trump, he could care less about the Constitution because he wants to be an extremist rightist, and his way is the highway. Kind of like Nero, Yeah. So you got two people in here which would be bad, toxic for the U.S. democracy. You're already teetering on the grounds that somebody may declare martial law here soon. See what I mean, Americans? And that program, it lasted 5 seasons, so it must have had a good following back in the 1990s, and I'm a science fiction guy, but I was busy working at the time. Didn't have time to watch it. Boy, came in at a late time, and I had to work early in those days. And I didn't quite get used to the VCR before they had the record that they had in the early 2000s. Remember the MMR or something like that you record on a cable? And now, well, you stream now. Yeah. So my question, Americans, is how many of you actually have read the U.S. Constitution? Maybe 1% of the whole population if you're lucky. That's not saying much for your nation, is it? This is your favorite alien doing his favorite commentary today, saying, where's the watermelons and when are you going to take them off? And said, can you imagine if we take the Constitution off, how will we be in 30 years? Oh, you'll be... Well, the crime rate will be gone down. There'll be no mass shootings. But whatever the martial law says, you better do or they'll shoot you. This is your favorite alien. Good day.